Robot Framework Libraries 301 to 400. Robot Framework JSON to Dictionary. This is a function for Robot Framework that converts JSON to dictionary. Robot Framework Elasticsearch Library. Robot Framework Elasticsearch Library. Robot Framework Library. Robot Framework FTP Library. Robot Framework Imagito Text Library. Robot Framework Library for converting image to text. Gherkin 2 Robot Framework Translate Gherkin feature files into Robot Framework tests. Robot Framework HTTP RabbitMQ, a Robot Framework RabbitMQ library. Robot Framework Faker. Robot Framework Wrapper for Faker, a fake test data generator. Robot Frameworks GLESS. Robot Frameworks GLESS is a SQL abstraction library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Import Resource Tool to import Robot Framework resource files from Python packages. Robot Framework Expects Train and use expectation detector in Robot Framework tests. Robot Framework Pandas Library. Pandas module support library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Import Resource Test Data package for Robot Framework Import Resource. Robot Framework PDF2 Text Library. Robot Framework PDF Inspect Library. Robot Framework Kurupa Hive is a robotic process automation library that allow the developer create RPA script easier and reduce complexity under robot script layer. Robot Framework Secrets Library. Robot Framework Test Library to manage secrets. Robot Framework Hub Web Server for Robot Framework assets. Robot Framework Flex Selenium Library. Adobe Flex Testing Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Property File and Utility Package for exposing Java-style properties from property files as variables in Robot Framework. Robot Framework Kafka Library. Kafka Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Avro Library. Avro Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Himlib. A Robot Framework library for YAML files. Protobuf Robot Framework Request. This library is a fork from Robot Framework Keyword Library Wrapper around requests. Support Protobuf. Robot Framework Interactive Process. A Robot Framework library for manage some interactive processes. Robot Framework Token Keycloak. A Robot Framework library for manage Keycloak token. Robot Framework Elasticsearch Library. Robot Framework Elasticsearch Library. Robot Framework WinRM Library. Robot Framework library for Windows remote management. Robot Framework Advanced Logging. Robot Framework Advanced Logging Library. Robot Framework JSON Validator. A Robot Framework JSON Validator library. Robot Framework Request Checker. Robot Framework library for checking HTTP response status codes. Robot Framework Report Portaling. A Robot Framework Report Portal Listener. Robot Framework Couchbase Manager. Robot Framework library for managing Couchbase server. Robot Framework Requests Logger. Robot Framework Requests Logging library. Robot Framework Tarantoa Library. A Robot Framework Taranto library. Robot Framework PostgreSQL. Robot Framework library for working with PostgreSQL database. Robot Framework RabbitMQ. A Robot Framework RabbitMQ library. Robot Framework Apache. A Robot Framework Apache Tomcat Manager library. Robot Framework TestRail Robot Framework Library, Listener and Pre-run Modifier for working with TestRail. Robot Framework Async Generic Robot Framework Library for asynchronous keyword execution. Robot Framework Quitelibrary Windows GUI Testing Library for Robot Framework. Swintech Robot Framework Common. Swintech Robot Framework Common is a robot framework test library in Swintech. Robot Framework Kafka Library Py3 Kafka Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework MongoDB Library Mongo Database Utility Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Redis Library. Swintech Robot Framework Redis Library is a robot framework test library for manipulating in-memory data which store in Redis. Robot Framework Excel Library. Swintech Robot Framework Swintech. Robot Framework MongoDB Library. Swintech Mongo Database Utility Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Database Lib Database Library for Robot Framework based on Sclalchemy. Robot Framework OpenPixLib 2 Robot Framework Library for Excel XLSX file format. Robot Framework libdoc2 JSON a Python module to create JSON for VS Code. Robot Framework IntelliSense. Robot Framework SUDS Library 3 Robot Framework Test Library for SOAP-based services. Robot Framework Schema Registry Library Schema Registry for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Scapy Library Scapy Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Library 3 Robot Framework Keywords for HTTP requests. Doryman Robot Framework Generic Automation Framework for acceptance testing and robotic process automation. Robot Framework FritzML Library Access to AVM Home Automation with Robot Framework. Robot Framework DateTime TZ Robot Framework Library for date time with locales and time zones. Robot Framework isStatus Simple UI to show the status of currently running robot. Robot Framework Heist Library Visual Verification Testing Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Remote Transfer Keyword Library to allow transferring screenshots from remote server to local machine. Robot Framework RP Tools Listener and Visitor modules for integration with Report Portal. Robot Framework Solapsitals Random Utilities used to help in writing RF libraries. Robot Framework Mainframe Library Robot Framework Library for Mainframe. Robot Framework XSD XSD Validator for Robot Framework. Robot Framework JSD JSD Validator for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Rambach Py3 Protocol Testing Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework SAP Library A Robot Framework Library for automating the SAP GUI desktop client. Robot Framework Zeep Library Robot Framework Library for using Zeep. Robot Framework Lexer Pigments Lexer for Robot Framework Test Data. Robot Framework Selenium Screenshots Robot Framework Keyword Library for capturing annotated screenshots with Selenium Library. Robot Framework Django Library, a robot framework library for Django. Robot Framework Zeep Web Service Testing Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework String Formatter for Robot Framework. Robot Framework OpenPixLib Robot Framework Library for Excel XLSX file format. Robot Frameworks Library Robot Framework Test Library for transferring files via secure copy. Robot Framework Excel Robot Framework Robot Framework's Tunnel Library SSH Tunnel Library for Robot Framework Robot Framework React a Robot Framework library for React Robot Framework Excel 10 Library Robot Framework Excel 10 Library Robot Framework Extended Selenium 2 Library Extended Selenium 2 Web Testing Library for Robot Framework with AngularJS support. Robot Framework Stub Library Stub Utility Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Selenium 2 Screenshots Robot Framework Keyword Library for capturing annotated screenshots with Selenium 2 Library. Robot Framework OpenSV Library OpenSV Utility Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Webpack a Robot Framework library for Webpack. Robot Framework Character Library Python Robot Framework library for iOS devices. Robot Framework Run Keyword Async Generic Robot Framework library for asynchronous keyword or method execution. Robot Framework JMeter Library Robot Framework JMeter Library Robot Framework TFTP Library Robot Framework TFTP Library Robot Framework Animal Testing a simplified robot framework extension that only uses 3 keywords with object maps. Robot Framework Selenium 2 Library Web Testing Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Library Qt Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework China Parking 新增停车场无感支付模拟接口。Robot Framework Allure Report Zajic Allure Reporting Adapter for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Library PY3 Robot Framework Test Library for SSH and SFTP. Robot Framework LP Library Linux Desktop Testing Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Tools Python Tools for Robot Framework and Test Libraries. Robot Framework and Client Robot Framework Keyword Library Wrapper Around Client. Robot Framework WebSocket Client Robot Framework Keywords for WebSocket Client. Robot Framework YAML Library YAML Utility Library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework CAMPed AMQP Library for usage in Robot Framework tests. Robot Framework Brabant BJ Robot is a web testing library for Robot Framework. Robot Framework Radius Robot Framework Radius Library. These were